Hello, and welcome to another vlog. This is my last vlog before I go on hiatus, but I will be returning on June 6th with more videos. This week's theme is epilepsy. As usual, I will be releasing a video on Thursday in which I talk more about what that is, so subscribe if you want to see that video. That will be my last educational video of the season, but I will be back with more educational videos in September. Today there's a couple of things I'd like to talk about. First, I'd like to talk about the walk for muscular dystrophy, and then I'd like to talk about some treatments for epilepsy. So let's get started. The Walk for Muscular Dystrophy is a national event put on by Muscular Dystrophy Canada each year to help raise money for people affected by neuromuscular disorders and their families. Now, the money they raise goes towards a number of things, such as research to develop new treatments and a cure, um, things like education and awareness, and also to fund things like equipment, particularly power wheelchairs and lifts and items like that that people with these disorders depend on every day. And speaking as someone who's received a lot of assistance from Muscular Dystrophy Canada over the years, I can tell you firsthand that they do a lot for people with muscular dystrophy and other neuromuscular disorders. I'm going to talk particularly about the Halifax Walk because that's the one that I've participated in the last few years, but the walk itself actually takes place all across Canada in communities all across the country. So the Halifax Walk this year is being held on June 2nd at the Halifax Marriott Harbourfront Hotel, which is the same place it's been held the last several years. Typically, people will start raising money for the event about 2 months before, so usually in April is when people will start raising money. And the walk itself starts at noon on the day of, usually with the welcome and opening remarks. Typically, you'll hear from the sponsors and community leaders to kind of get people in the mood to walk and to really set the tone. Then the bagpipers start to play, and the crowd follows them along the boardwalk, and then we loop back around to the hotel. Now, it is called the walk, but obviously not everyone in the event is walking. You know, a lot of people use wheelchairs and scooters, so we'll drive our wheelchairs and scooters along the boardwalk, and then some people take their bikes and right. So it's called the walk, but that doesn't mean that everyone does walk, obviously. Now, when the walk's over and the actual walk part of the event is over and we return to the hotel, they'll usually give out prizes to the top fundraisers and other people who've really helped contribute to the event. And then they'll also hand out awards to some of the VIPs. And when I say VIPs, I'm really talking about people who have done a lot of volunteer work and advocacy throughout the year and who deserve to be recognized. They'll usually get awards, and oftentimes there's an award for uh, one of the families who's done a lot for the community, uh, specifically for people with neuromuscular disorders. So there is that opportunity for recognition, and how fitting that it takes place during the biggest event of the year. Um, right, and then there's food and entertainment after the walk, and actually during the walk as well, right? So after the walk, you can hang out with your friends, get a bite to eat, and listen to the band play, right? So it is a great chance to not only help people with neuromuscular disorders, but also to have a lot of fun. Um, and everyone has their own reasons for participating in the walk. For some people, it's because they have a neuromuscular disorder, and for others, it's because they know someone close to them who has a neuromuscular disorder. For me in particular, it's because I have Duchenne muscular dystrophy, and I know a lot of other people with muscular dystrophy. So that's why the cause is important for me, because not only does it help me directly, but it also helps a lot of other people who I know. And adding to that, the fact that I've lost a lot of close friends to muscular dystrophy, that just adds to the significance of the event for me. You know, obviously, I can't speak for everyone, but that is the reason why the event is significant for me, and that's the reason why I participated in it every year and will continue to participate in it for years to come. And I'm going to include a link in the description to the walk website. So if anyone wants to, get involved, then you can learn more about the walk and maybe get involved if you want. Maybe not this year, but maybe in future years. So be on the lookout for that. That'll be in the description below. So that is basically all about the walk. And that brings me to the next thing that I want to talk about, which is some of the different treatments for epilepsy. Now, I'm actually going to be talking about one treatment in particular. It's a somewhat newer treatment, but it's been being used for several years. It's called neuromodulation. Now, typically, epilepsy is treated using medication, and there's also other treatments such as deep brain stimulation, which I think we talked about during the episode about depression, and surgery to remove the part of the brain that causes the seizure. Now, these treatments vary from person to person. Not all treatments are right for every person, but typically medication is their go-to treatment. However, there are some types of epilepsy that are resistant to medication. And in cases like this, they'll use the neuromodulation. So neuromodulation basically means that they implant a special device somewhere in the body, and that helps to stimulate the brain or nervous system to help reduce the frequency or severity of the seizures, because seizures are the main symptom of epilepsy. Now, I want to stress that these treatments don't actually cure the epilepsy, but they do help manage symptoms. So there's a couple different types of neuromodulation. One is called vagus nerve stimulation. So with this type, they'll implant the device in the chest, and then a wire wraps around the vagus nerve and will send regular impulses at the vagus nerve at regular intervals to kind of stimulate it and help prevent a seizure from happening. And typically the user doesn't even notice that these impulses are being sent to the vagus nerve. And then the other kind is called responsive neurostimulation. So in this kind, the devices are planted in the skull, and then a couple of wires are inserted into the brain, typically to the parts of the brain that are responsible for that person's seizures. Now that varies from person to person depending on what their diagnosis is and what kind of seizures they're having, because there are many different types of seizures. And that device functions much like a pacemaker in the heart. Just like a pacemaker in the heart would send an electrical shock to the heart in the event of cardiac arrest, this device sends an impulse to the brain during the event of a seizure to help prevent the seizure. So that's why it's called responsive, because unlike the vagus nerve stimulation, which is sending out an impulse at regular intervals, this one's only sending out an impulse during the event of a seizure. And like I said, this is typically used in people who do not benefit from the anti-seizure medication, because usually the medication and then the deep brain stimulation and surgery and dietary therapy and some of those other treatments are usually used first, but the neuromodulation is more of a last resort. And I wanted to talk about that today because, I thought it was kind of an interesting topic, and it's a bit of a newer treatment in some ways, and the devices are constantly being improved upon. So that was just something that I wanted to talk about. And of course, it relates to this week's topic of epilepsy. Anyway, that's all for today. If you found this video as interesting and as informative as I did, then please hit that subscribe button. And also be sure to like us on Facebook and to follow us on Twitter. Like I said, I won't be back with any videos until June 6th. So until then, I hope you enjoy the nice weather. Anyway, thanks for watching and see you in June.